is Jada Breeden, and we're here to wrap up this legislative season. And I think it's been a long 4 or 5 months. 16. Oh, yeah, he told me that he was gone for 16 months, so he's behind at home.
Thank you all for coming. Driving over here this morning, I was pleasantly happy with the fog that I saw. You know, it takes moisture to make fog, so we've been getting some decent rain, along with that other bad stuff. But, you know, we were kind of moving into another drought cycle, so I was happy to see that it was able to rain here. So, was glad for that. Yeah, 16 months, because, you know, we basically didn't have a break last year. We had about a month, and then we went into special session, and it's kind of like when you get in that wreck and that car just keeps spinning. We just could never get out of the spin. We went into one special session, then the next, and the next, and then that special session moved into regular session, and all during that time I decided to run for Senate, so I was campaigning. And somebody asked me, I was down there at the Capitol, and they asked, what's it like campaigning while we're in the middle of special session? And I said, have you imagined swimming across the ocean with a lead weight tied to your butt? That's what it was like. It was not a whole lot of fun. Because, you know, people are mad. They're upset with how things were going. I mean, the 3 years that I've been there 4 years now, but the first 3 years, we were dealing with massive holes in our budget and unable to pass revenue to fill these holes. So the only thing we were left to do was cut. And especially out here, when we cut, they cut us first. Our services get cut first. Our roads get neglected. Our hospitals are on the verges of shutting down. They seem to take care of themselves in Oklahoma City. And during my campaign and out and talking to people and just driving up and down the road, it dawned on me. Do you know why, as you move further west, you get people that are more opposed to raising their taxes? It's because the farther west you get, you don't see the services your taxes are paying for. Me sitting in Felt, Oklahoma, I pay the same tax rate as the guy in my tax bracket in Oklahoma City, but do I see the same services that he gets? No. That's why we are, the further west you get, the more opposed to taxes. But it's the chicken or the egg. If we want these services, we've got to have revenue coming into the state. And with that being said, our revenue has increased. The economy's turning around. Like it or not, Oklahoma's an oil state. And if they're not drilling and exploring for oil, our economy hurts. And a friend of mine at the Capitol said one time, he said, Oklahoma doesn't make money pumping oil out of the ground. Oklahoma, and he's talking about the state, Oklahoma makes money by punching holes into the ground. And you think about it. These crews that's on these drilling rigs, there's a lot of people working on a drilling rig. How many people's working checking that well once it's put in? And those guys are making lots of money. And they're out buying new vehicles, they're buying furniture, they're spending that money at the restaurants, and that's what drives our economy. And I think it was 15, they were laying down all these rigs. I remember driving through Woodward, and I can't tell you how many rigs were laid down just there in the north side of Woodward. That was hurting our economy. First year I was at the Capitol, $611 million hole in the budget. The next year, $1.3 billion hole in the budget. The following year, $868 million hole in the budget. The only thing that we could get done is cuts, and we cut and we cut and we cut. And you guys have seen it. You've seen it in the services the state is supposed to provide, whether it's roads and bridges, and this is core services that, in my opinion, we were neglecting. But, you know, we wasn't able to go out and raise a big revenue package. We did little things, and I hear about it. We raised the excise tax on new vehicles. And did Y'all realize when we did that, we went from the lowest in the region on tax on new vehicles to the lowest in the region on tax on new vehicles. We're still the lowest around. But these little things that we have done, along with the drilling activity coming back this year, I feel like we've kind of got things turned around and we're on the right track. If our economy keeps growing and we keep getting the revenues that are projected, it looks like we're going to be able to put $300 million back into the rainy day fund, which we had tapped out in those 3 years that we had these massive holes in the budget. This year we did have a big revenue package that actually got passed, and we were able to give teachers a pay raise. We was able to put $33 million to buy textbooks. I have the numbers here, so I can tell you exactly what those numbers were. $54 million for state employee raises. Now, the teachers and the state employees in Oklahoma have not had a raise in about 12 years. Do I have some teachers in here? Is it about 12 years? About 10. 10 years. I don't know about you, but just the cost of living has gone up in that amount of time. I mean, it was time that we showed some appreciation and give our state employees a pay raise. And teachers. Teachers, the total package for teachers was $365 million for the teacher pay raise. That averages out to about $6,100 per teacher. Now that was on a seniority scale, so the more years you taught, the bigger raise you get. And the first year teacher, I think, was $4,800, and if you were like a 15 to 20 year teacher, it was an $8,100, but it averages out for all of them about $6,100. We had about $260 million growth in our revenue coming in, and that was between the little measures that we've done and our economy turning around. Are we done working? No. There are issues in this state that have to be addressed, and I've put it to a lot of people like this. It's kind of like back home at my place, and I've been gone so much it shows, but it's like a fence that you haven't had the money to fix it, you hadn't had the time to fix it, you just run out there and you bale and wire it together. And after so long of baling wiring that fence together, before long you don't really have a fence, you have a bluff trying to keep these cows in. Well, that's what we've been doing at the state level. We haven't had the money to fix anything right. We've just been baling wiring things together. And I think right now we're at the point that our fence is about to fall down. DOC is in big trouble. Their prisons are literally falling down. They are, the feds are going to come in here. We are overcrowded, but just the infrastructure, the prisons are in such bad physical shape. I mean, the DOC came this year, was wanting $1 billion to rebuild some prisons, build some new prisons, because we've been baling wire and duct taping things together for so long. Education. You guys driven on our roads, you know where our roads are at. We've got a lot of work to continue to do. And I think we're not out of the woods, but we can see the light. We're about there. Something else, you know, on this revenue package that we did this year, I was getting beat up on it for voting for it. And I had one guy really beating me up. And I said, you know, look, he said, well, you raised my family's taxes. You raised my family's taxes. And I know the guy, and I said, does your family have an oil company? No? Well, I guess I didn't raise your taxes. Does your family smoke? And I know his family, they don't smoke. I said, no? I guess I didn't raise your taxes. And as far as the gas tax, now we have not raised our gas tax in Oklahoma since 1987. We raised it 3 cents a gallon, gas. Now before I was elected, just my daily routine of checking cows, going to town, getting feed, making that circle every day, I'd put about 50,000 miles a year on my pickup. At 16 miles to the gallon, average, 3 cents a gallon, it's $1.81 a week that this tax increase costs. Like $93 a year. Guys, do you guys realize I buy more blue and gold sausage supporting my schools than this gas tax is going to cost me? And it's at the point in Oklahoma, we've got to invest in Oklahoma as citizens. And it's what is our education system worth? And that was our decision this year at the Capitol, is we had to decide, what is our education worth in this state? Are we going to invest in it? And did we fix all the problems? No. And there's not a one fix, Hail Mary, we're done, it's all fixed. But it's putting pieces together. It's slowly building it up. Right before I moved from the House to the Senate, I was in caucus. And as you can imagine, we had the threat of the teacher walkout. We had, people upset from being in special session basically all year long. Well, tempers were a little hot in the caucus meeting. And they were beating the speaker up and just sniping at each other. And I got up and I talked and I said, look, guys, we have been at this all year long, and I know we're tired. And I went into my spiel about, look where we were at 3 years ago. But, there's a lot of times that you have your head down and you're working and you're just hammering at it and you just keep getting hit. Every once in a while you got to stop and turn around and look at what you accomplished. Not at the big task that lies ahead of you. Look at what you got accomplished. And when you turn around and in the bad things that we've had happen to this state over the past, since I've been there, when you turn around and look at what we have accomplished, they're not monumental things, but we kept the doors open. And if you talk to some of the agencies, we really cut them really bad. But I think, and then this is, it's my opinion. You know what opinions are like. Everybody's got them, and they all stink. But we, in those bad 3 years, $611 million, $1.3 billion, and we were able to kind of hold things together. Yeah, some people took some cuts, but we got through it. And are we totally over the hump right now? I don't think so. We still have work to do, but like I said, there's some light at the end of the tunnel. We're able to put some money into the rainy day fund. We have a bill that's still kind of being tweaked, but it's a savings account for Oklahoma. And that's what we've got to do. And I think I talked about this the first time I ran. The state of Oklahoma, major economy driving force is agriculture and oil and gas. And both of those commodities are traded on the Board of Trade. And so you're going to have good years, you're going to have bad years. It's just like farming. Wheat prices are up, wheat prices are down. But Leon, you've got to save a little money to get through those bad times, don't you? That's what our state has to do, and we're still working on it, but it's not the rainy day fund, because the rainy day fund has criteria on when you can pull it out. This is going to be hopefully at some point it will grow. I think Alaska has something like this, and hopefully at some point we can have enough in the savings account. Oklahoma can be a trust fund baby, and we can just live off the interest of this savings account. But we're working on things like that. I'm going to run through some other. Last year our total budget was $6.8 billion. This year, total budget was 7.6. That's how much our economy grew and how much the revenue started coming in. We raised our education budget 19%. It was, I believe last year was 2.4 billion. This year our education budget is 2.9 billion. And that's common ed and higher ed altogether. We have $24.6 million more funding, or a funding increase for DHS. So DHS is getting 24 million more. Criminal justice reform is getting 11 million. It goes on 4 million for Office of Emergency Management. 400,000 of that is going to volunteer firefighters. And you know, yeah, you guys are well aware of the fires that we've had basically the last 2 years. It's drained our firefighters, our volunteer firefighters, their resources, because of these massive fires that we've had. So we've given them 400,000 more. But like I said, there's problems in this state. I can tell you right now, I am not very happy with some of our agencies. First being Department of Health. I'm still, end of the day, I'm still just Casey Murdoch rancher. And one thing that irritates the heck out of me is when somebody lies to me. And that's what they did. They came to the legislature and they lied to us about their needs and how much money they had. They had a $30 million slush fund. And then come in and whine and say, we need more money, we need more money. And not only that, they were laying people off. 188 jobs they laid off. Those are people's lives. Laid them off. While the fat cats in Oklahoma City was giving themselves raises and having this slush fund of money. If you all remember, I ran the audit bill, I guess it was 2 years ago. And you hear a lot about those audits in this campaign, especially the governor campaign. We've got to do that. More so today than when I first ran the bill. Because Department of Health is a prime example of why we've got to do it, because they cannot be honest when they come to the legislature and ask for their needs. Tell us what their needs are. And I was going to say in crunch time when we're broke and we've got to tighten up the belt, we've got to know what your exact needs are, because we've got to fund health. We've got to make sure they have money. We've got to make sure the hospitals are open and the people have health care in the state. And that's going to take precedence. But if they're not giving us the legit numbers and we wind up cutting other agencies to make sure they have money when they really didn't need it, other agencies and other cogs in this state that keeps this state running gets hurt. And at the end of the day, I hate being lied to, and it just makes me mad all over knowing that they came to us and lied to us and what their needs were. With that, I will kind of wrap up my update and take questions.
My name is Jennifer Reynolds, and my question is, well, I have more than one question. First of all, forgive me because I'm new to politics, and is my understanding when oil was selling for 100 plus a barrel that we decreased the gross production tax? Is that so, or am I skewed on that? Is that how we got down to a 2%?
No, and I don't know what the price of oil was when that was lowered. When we moved down, and actually we moved down to 1%, and that was in the mid-90s. And what the 1% was now, what a lot of people don't realize is there's 42,000 wells out there that's at 7%. The only oil wells that was at 2 and at this time at 1 was the horizontal. And I'm at the mid-90s and 95, 96, but when they first came up with this technology to drill horizontally, Oklahoma gave them an incentive because at that time that technology was new and very expensive. And Oklahoma said, you know, if you come to Oklahoma and you try this horizontal drilling, we will lower your gross production tax to 1% for 36 months, then you move to 7. Now that's only on horizontal wells. All the vertical wells are at 7. But that was in the 90s, and then I think it was in 13, 12, 13, or 14, right in there, we raised it to 2. And you would have thought we were raping these guys. You're doubling our taxes. But we raised it from 1 to 2, and I think in 13 or 14. And this year we raised it to 5. You hear a lot about the effective tax rate on oil and gas. I can tell you in the battles we had last year on trying to get that raised, there was numerous people came into my office talking about effective tax rate, and it ranged from 3.6 to 9%. But when you kind of cleared the mud off, and this is just my opinion, back to you know what opinions are like, where I think the true effective tax rate before we raised it was about 5.3 on them. And then we raised them from 2 to 5.3, so that now I think their effective tax rate is about 8.6. But yeah, I don't remember what the oil prices were in the mid-90s, but that's whenever we did that. Okay. And I say we, that's a collective we. I was chasing cows somewhere in 96. I wasn't down there when they did that.
Okay. Another question I have is, where is the petition at that's going to stop the pay raises? Or not, I don't mean stop it, but put it to a vote.
It's, I don't know as far as how many signatures they have.
What's the deadline for filing it? I was told sometime in July. Is that true?
Probably. I think they've got like 90 days, 60 days, or 90 days to get the signatures. I would bet dollars to donuts they get the signatures.
Yeah, I'm betting so.
It's going. And when we had the 36,000 teachers at the Capitol, and kind of what I told the teachers that was coming into my office, if this, and it's going to go to the ballot, I feel pretty strong about that. But what I told them is if it goes to the ballot, I said it's going to be up to the teachers.
Yes.
I said these 36,000 teachers that's out here on the front lawn today needs to go out and mount a campaign and go knock doors. Mm-hmm. and explain to their neighbors door to door why education needs this funding, and explain to them, because they're going to hear all kinds of rhetoric. They're going to hear Oklahoma doesn't need this. You know, look at the revenue coming in. So you're going to have
they don't need that Oklahoma doesn't need what?
This revenue that we can find. We can find the revenue for this through cuts and efficiencies. And that's okay. What that other side is right. Saying. That's their campaign slogan.
Okay.
So education needs to get out there and combat that. And that's and you know, you being a teacher, there's the force out there. I saw them at the Capitol this year. Mm-hmm. There's plenty of people to walk and knock doors and sell their case.
Yeah.
Because I think the OEA spent a lot of money on that walkout, and I don't know what kind of money they have in their coffers as far as doing commercials and ads and to fight this measure. And it's just going to take a lot of sweat and hard work of knocking doors.
I had one more question, but I forgot it, so it'll come back to me.
Okay. One thing, since you brought this up, and I forgot to bring this up. During the teacher walkout, capital gains was brought up, and they were wanting to do away with the exemption that the voters put in several years ago on capital gains. And I don't remember exactly what it was. I'm sorry, but for us, that capital gains would be a killer for our farmers and ranchers out here. It would just slowly chip away at basically they're already working on a very fine margin, profit margin, and it just cuts into that. So I think that was going to be a horrible idea.
I thought there was an ag exemption.
Can't do that. It would make it unconstitutional because you're picking out one industry and making them favorable.
I just remember my other comment.
Okay.
When you did teacher raises, or, I mean, you know, they said the older teachers get the more. Well, you can look at me and see I'm on the older end of that probably. I think that's a mistake. I think the young teachers need the most.
I can tell you what we were thinking when we did that. We were looking at experience.
Yeah, but if you don't keep your young people here,
You're right. I talked to a teacher in Felt, the coach there, and it's his first year. He was tickled pink with it. He said, you know, my first year here and I get a 15% raise. He goes, I'm happy with this.
Hi, my name's Vonda Wilkins, and I have two questions. The first one, you were talking about health care, and I saw that Virginia just passed the Medicaid expansion that Governor Fallon had rejected when the Affordable Care Act passed. Is that something that Oklahoma can look at, and would you be in favor of it?
I'd have to look into that. I know a few years ago when we were looking at that, there were several states that went ahead and did that, and they were in a jam financially, and I'm just gonna have to look into that. I can't speak on as far as what that's gonna do.
Well, that would be federal dollars to support our healthcare system here in the state, right?
It would be, yeah, but I'm not familiar enough with that to give you a good answer. All I can say is, I'll look into that.
Okay, thank you. My other question was, I was reading a couple days ago that Governor Fallon has passed or implemented an independent audit composed of business people. Do you know anything about that? That's separate from the state auditor?
Okay, that may be the bill that I ran, and my bill that I ran got married in with the speaker's bill, and there was actually that year there were 3 audit bills out there, and what they did is they took pieces from all of it. That is probably what that's probably what you're reading.
It was Governor Fallon and the 2 majority leaders of the 2.
I'm sure that's what it was, and that component of the audits was not in my bill. That was in the speaker's bill, and what it did is it set up a commission to decide where they were going to start the audits and what they were auditing next, and that's probably what it was.
Okay, what's the commission called?
It's the audit commission.
The audit commission. Okay, thank you.
My name is Brad Raven from Beaver County. Casey, did I understand you correctly just a little bit ago when you were talking about the ag exemption tax, that is unconstitutional and that is off the table?
No, that was in, if we would have exempted the gross product, or not gross production, I'm sorry, the capital gains exemption that all the voters put on. What was that, Leon? When was that? But I want to say like 2008. I could say 4 or 5. Maybe 4 or 5. But if we went in there, and since how it was a ballot initiative, if we went in there and changed that and exempted ag, then that's what made it unconstitutional, because we as the legislators picking one industry that we're exempting and everybody else has to pay it. So
okay.
It would have been fought as unconstitutional. Same idea as what we did 2 years ago on electric cars. We tried to put a fee on electric cars, and they fought it, and it was deemed unconstitutional because we didn't do it to gas cars, and it was unfair.
Okay. So the ag sales tax exemption that was talked about passing last session, is that still up for debate?
Yes, and I'm glad you brought that up. First, actually, it might have been my first appropriation and budget meeting in the Senate. There was a senator that wanted to do away with the ag tax exemption. Last summer, during special session, we're in caucus and we're going through all the exemptions because we're trying to find revenue to plug this hole. And there were about 3 representatives from Oklahoma City that their finger stopped right there on the ag tax exemption. I said, what about this one? And I said, you want to really see me get mad? You go after this one and you'll see my head explode. Then the senator actually ran a bill. Before it was just talked about. This session he actually ran a bill to do away with the ag tax exemption. Now, how that affects us is horrible. Horrible. You want to say stick in the fork in rural Oklahoma, we're done. The nail in the coffin, however you want to say it, for District 61, it is devastating. Your Main Street will dry up in every town because you're going to have these farmers and ranchers that can't get their sales tax exemption in this state. We're too close. We'll go to Liberal, we'll go to Amarillo, Dumas to buy their parts, to buy their feed, to buy their supplies. Well, guess what? While they're down there doing that, let's run by and buy groceries because there's no sales tax on groceries in Texas. Let's go ahead and buy our groceries. You know, little Johnny needs a new pair of shoes. Let's just go ahead and get it while we're here. You know what? I've been buying my parts here at the John Deere place in Dumas. I need a new, I'm just going to go ahead and buy my tractor here. It would kill Main Street. Let's go ahead and eat here. You know, honey, I was down getting a part in Dumas. They opened up a new restaurant. Let's run down there and try it out. What does that do to our economy here in Guyman? If we get rid of that sales tax exemption on ag, is devastating to the communities that is close to state lines. So that bill died in committee. It didn't die as bad as I wanted to see it die. It got 14 votes. And I was wanting to see it die a lot worse. I was wanting to actually just see one vote on it, and that was the senator that was running it. But he's from Tulsa. By the way, he's also the senator that runs all the anti-wind legislation too. Same guy. Is that argument going to come up again? It is. Agriculture in this state, agriculture across the nation is under the gun. This session, I had a guy from Boise City call me and said, hey, I just got pulled over, and highway patrolman told him he was pulling a diesel trailer and said, you know, you can't pull a diesel trailer that holds more than 119 gallons of diesel. It's illegal. He called me and said, you know, how many trips am I supposed to make? My combine holds 300 gallons. So I called OHP and I said, hey, what's going on? We need to fix this. Well, it's federal. It's Federal Motor Carriers Rule. And it's a rule. It's not a law, it's a rule. That's what irritates me. These agencies pass these rules, and our representative Lucas can't stop it because it's a rule. It's not a law. It wasn't ran through the process. They just decided that'd be a good rule. But what the liaison to the OHP told me, he said, you know, where at one time ag had favorable status, they're losing it. People are not wanting to give ag exemptions anymore. I had people call my office on the teacher walkout, and we had quite the battle over capital gains. And they told me they didn't see why farmers are getting a favor done to them. You know, we're feeding the world. Not just Oklahoma, not just the United States. We are feeding the world. Texas County is number 1 ag producing county in the state. Number 4 or 10 in the nation. 4th in the nation, ag producing county. That's who we are. I can honestly say, right here in Texas County, we are feeding the world. And I do it every day, and I promise you, I'm not getting rich doing it. It's a damn expensive hobby for me. If you don't believe me, ask my wife. You know, blizzards. I'm out there making sure those calves are alive, freezing. And more than likely I lose calves, and I know one year My whole profit for the year was laying in that pasture because of a blizzard. I worked for free. And I'm no different than any other guy out there that's farming and ranching. We're not doing it for the money. We're doing it because we love to do it. We have a passion for what we're not in there to get rich. And our profit margins are so narrow that we need these tax exemptions to survive. We need this favorable status to continue doing business. Because if not, I can tell you where we'll get to corporate farms. And that scares me. That scares me. And I'm not a tree hugger. I'm a farmer. I'm a rancher. I'm the number one environmentalist, but I don't consider myself a tree hugger. But environmentally, that scares me. Because you look from the state line in New Mexico and you go clear across the panhandle. 99% of who we are family farms. 99% of who we are people that their granddad and their great-granddad farmed that piece of property or ranched that piece of property. And our plan is to leave it to our son. We're going to take care of that land. We're going to make sure it is better than what we found it, more productive. When you lose those people that are tied to that land through blood, sweat, and tears, and you have a corporation come in here and corporate farm it and looking for the profit, what I see is they could come in and rape this land. They will pump every drop of water out of the ground to make sure they produce a crop and profitable. They don't live here. They'll make all the money they can right here and then move off. Go somewhere else. And then we're stuck here to live here. I want to leave something to my son. I want to leave something for my grandkids. I want to build something for them right here. And when we start losing these little exemptions, these little, and it, you know, okay, you have to go buy a tank, and I talked to another farmer on this diesel issue. And this is government and no common sense, but if you have 3 different tanks on your trailer at 119, my math's bad, that's 357, I think. And you just have a manifold in there. They're not connected, but you have a manifold that you can switch it, and that's okay. That's okay to have. Now, I would think that the reason this rule is there is if you wreck this diesel trailer out there, you don't have this big spill. Well, if you wreck this diesel trailer out there that's got a manifold and it's 3 tanks instead of just 1, you still have a big spill. There's no common sense there. And I don't know, I'm sure most of you guys have passed a farmer pulling a diesel trailer. I guarantee you they're not driving 80 mile an hour. It's about 40. And that farmer paid for that diesel that's sitting in that trailer. They're not gonna, that's a lot of money. They're gonna make sure they don't spill it. It's common sense, guys, and we need more of it. Did I raise any questions with that? I'm glad you're here.
What is the difference between they have a sales tax exemption, and that's constitutional, but a capital gains tax exemption isn't constitutional? Can you tell me the difference?
Actually, capital gains is because it was voted by the
But
people
the
and put.
exception, though, you said we couldn't say except, do you see
Right.
what I'm saying?
Yeah, and so the sales tax exemption is not constitutional. That's why that senator was able to run that.
But
And
they have it, though,
they have it, yes.
and they need it, and I understand that. So why can they not have the capital gains exemption?
because of
Because it's not constitutional.
that, well, because so when the people of Oklahoma voted for that capital gains exemption, it was across the board everything. And that was one piece of legislation, and that's in law. If we go in there and we put that back onto the people and we exempt one portion of this, that makes it that's what makes it unconstitutional. It's when you go in and carve out one special group and give them an exemption, and this other group still has to pay it. That's what makes it unconstitutional. Mhm.
Hi, I'm Kayla McCarter. Can we get back to the health department? I've got a couple questions. I think my biggest one is the money's reappeared. Our health department's not broke anymore. Now what? What?
Are they
Who's
hired?
being?
And I need to find. I haven't, because all this kind of hit pretty fast, and I was still moving cows. I want to know, are they hiring these 118 people that they fired back?
They do have, according to the website, they do have positions that are open. However, have not heard anything about some of our smaller clinics being reopened.
Okay.
We have nothing in Cimarron. I know that they went in and
Nothing, or is it 1 day a week?
No, there's nothing.
Okay, because I think the
We're
last
no-
time we were talked, it was 1 day a week.
They pulled that. We're no longer providing services out at Cimarron County.
Okay. That's why they don't like any taxes out there. But go ahead.
So, you can sit there and we're all mad. State employees are mad. We were riffed. We were laid off. We were lied to, just like everybody else. So who's going to be held accountable, and what is being done to fix everything?
I can tell you, as far as being a senator and the representatives I've talked to, they're hot over this. Nobody likes being lied to. As far as the I hope in the right direction. I think, I hate it that it was the healthcare department that got caught up into this because it's so important to Oklahoma. But I'm always a glass half full. I think this gives us the opportunity to start getting us back on track and fixing a lot of the problems. It's not, I don't think it's just the health department that was doing this. I think it's across the board. It's going to help us get us back on track and hopefully not run into this mess again. As far as, the director has been switched. Yeah. I think they've burnt their hand on the stove, and I think they're going to start fixing the problem, because as a legislature, as a senator, and I know the representatives I've talked to, we want it fixed, and we want it fixed right. As far as timeline when that happens, I can't tell you when. I know I can give you some more numbers, but we're getting it back on track, and I haven't heard who's the new. Mr. Bates. Okay, see, I haven't met him, so I can't give you an opinion. I kind of got to meet a guy before I can say he's going to get things done.
Another thing is a lot of these other agencies are getting budget increases. Are their audits going to be completed before? Are you guys trying to get any?
So,
Done with that?
in my research, whenever I was running this bill, an agency like DHS or education, they're so huge, it'll take about 6 months to do the audit. So I think they're starting with DHS, the audits. But since it's healthcare debacle, they may be starting there. They may have switched places, and excuse me. But for an agency the size of DHS or the healthcare department or education, it'll take about 6 months to get that audit done. So, this is June, so you're looking January. Hopefully we'll have some information coming back by the time session starts. But the problem is, as far as bill filing deadlines, we've got to have legislation, final language by the 21st of January. So if we're getting numbers back, but with that also being said, the AB chairman can bring up a bill anytime they want to. So, I mean, if we need to run legislation to fix something, the AB chairs can do that. But I hope we're fixing it. Like I said, there's still a lot of work to be done. And it's going to be constant. I made this statement this session, and it was this group that was saying there's enough waste and cuts that we can fund everything. Well, like I said, in that research that I'd done on that audit deal, and I modeled my bill after Ohio. Ohio saw, I'm testing my memory now, about $280 million worth of savings, but Ohio's budget is 3 times what our budget is. They're 3 times as big. So if you just ratio that out, we're looking at about $100 million worth of savings. And these people are saying, we can find the cuts and the savings to pay for everything. We can't. It's not there. It will help. I mean, we've got to do it. Is there waste in government? Yes, there's waste. Is there bloat? Yes, there's bloat. But as a senator, as a legislator, it's my duty to fight that constantly. It's kind of like when you get mice in your house. You don't just put those traps out one time and say, okay, I fixed the problem. It's a constant battle of holding these agencies accountable. And I think the healthcare debacle is one example of not sitting there and holding these agency feet to the fire, holding them accountable for what they're doing will get us in a jam. And I think we have learned from that lesson, and we are going to start holding these agency head accountable, because they're not. There was a representative I was talking to was going after this agency, and he goes and he visits with this agency head, and he's kind of getting on him. He's wanting to know this, and I mean he's hammering pretty good. And the agency head finally said, "Do you see that clock on the wall?" He goes, "That clock was here before you got here." And he goes, "I promise you that clock will be here after you leave." What that agency head was telling that representative was, "I was here before you got here, and I will be here after you leave, after you term out." That is one bad thing about term limits. It has given agency heads and lobbyists all the power at the Capitol. I was talking to someone last night, and they were shocked. They said, "You're going to be there 12 years and you hope you get accomplished what you want to accomplish?" I said, "Yeah." Because when you think about it, it takes on-the-job training. I feel pretty comfortable where I'm at as far as knowing where to look and the paths I need to take to start fixing some things, but I've been there 4 years. And I'm still learning. But let's say 4 years, I know how that place works. That's a third of my tenure down there. So think about it. A third of a representative or senator's tenure at the Capitol is on-the-job training. So what that tells me is a third of the time of the people that you elect, a third of their time to do your business is on-the-job training. And then they're gone. And then you start over with another 4 years of on-the-job training. And you actually, the people of Oklahoma is only getting about 8 years of good service out of an individual. If this is a corporation, we would be broke. Do you think corporations or businesses, I won't even say businesses. Casey, in your business, if you hired somebody and it took you 4 years to train them and you knew they was going to be gone in 8 years, what would you do?
That's a different thing.
You know, companies have,
I'm in favor of term limits.
Well, companies have a lot of investment, and term limits is, I voted for them when we voted for them because we needed to clean house. And is there bad senators and representatives down there that needs out? You're right, there is. But you also lose a lot of good ones. So it's a balance. But I can tell you these agency heads are running rapid. What irritates me to no end is when anyone is presenting a bill in committee, and more times than not this question comes up, and the question is, does the agency approve of this bill? If the agency does not approve of this bill, it fails. So that tells me who's running the show down there. Is it the representatives or is it the agencies? When they can just say, we don't approve of this bill, and it gets voted down. You guys elected me to go down there and make decisions. How many in here voted for an agency head?
How do we change it?
Legislation. One thing I've been pushing is more accountability. So these agency heads, and I can see why they did it when they did it. They are there from 5 to 9 years on well, these boards, I'm sorry, the boards that appoints the agency heads. They're appointed for 5 to 9 years. And I can see why they did that. That way, they're trying to take politics out of it. And that way, say you have a Democratic governor that appoints this board, and then you get a Republican governor, in 4 years. You have a better bipartisan board, and I can see why they did that. They wanted to reflect everybody for this board for when they appoint agency heads. We need a check on it. We need legislative, and it's accountability. We need a legislative approval and a vetting process that runs through the legislature before we hire these guys, because I'm held accountable. DHS's mess, closing down Cimarron County's deal, cutting these people, cutting our services all the way out here. Who's going to pay for that when the people get mad? Who's going to be held accountable for all that? I am. My name's on the ballot every 4 years. Last year was every 2 years. My name's on the ballot. I'm accountable for what the state does. We need more accountability.
Okay, so in your auditing process, do you have the ability, when you find corruption or problems or people that are just fraudulently doing things, to legally take action?
There's not, as far as the audit bill, there's no teeth in it to send anybody to jail or prosecute if there's fraud. It would probably, it will be referred to the Attorney General or a prosecutor if there's fraud or corruption.
It seems like that would be the way to put the teeth in it.
Right, and I guess we could add that if you are, but we've already got laws on corruption right now. So probably, this is one part where I'm still learning the process. I would think that, if this audit finds something, we have this other law on the books that will prosecute.
So they hand off. Your audit department hands off to legal.
Yeah, it's totally transparent. And one thing that one of the major things I liked about this audit bill is it is ran by the legislature. It is funded through LSB, which is the Legislative Bureau Service that comes out of we do it. It's not the state auditor. We do it independently. And so all that information comes to us. I like it because it's it can't be politicized. You know, the auditor is a state elected office. And the auditor sometimes gets out there and politicizes a lot of stuff. And I didn't want this politicized. I wanted this to be as clean politically as it, get in there and look at the numbers clean without thinking about politics.
Right, it should just be as simple as right and wrong,
Exactly,
no
exactly.
matter who, no matter what.
Right.
Now, when you say like auditing, you're meaning this. Sorry. When you say auditing, you're meaning the state agency there in Oklahoma City, because we get audited out here.
No, this is the whole agency. This is performance audits. It's the whole agency.
Because county agencies, we get audited and
Right.
it's all looked at. So that we're talking about the central office.
Right. Right.
Now, does the county offices, like with DHS,
No,
do they
this-
get audited like?
Not through what we're doing. It's going to be the agency as a total. They're going to look at all the numbers. Would they follow a rabbit trail? So say they found something and it rabbited out to Texas County. Yeah, they would probably come here and investigate and see what's going on. But no, this is the whole agency as a whole. It's not going to. I can imagine with how many health departments there are in the state, we would never get done.
Now, with, like with our state health department, our local offices, they get audited. In other agencies, is there a process where those local those offices
Counties
are
get
getting?
audited. I know when I was on the school board, we get audited every year.
So it's more down the state that needs to get it.
Every other year, they come in and do a audit on every county agency. Didn't mean to take that over, Katie, but they do that every agency in the county. We're audited every other year.
And I know when I was on the school board, we had our school got audited every year. And they would come in and say, look, you're short here, and they'd red flag whatever we needed to fix. And when I first ran the bill, there was a lot of pushback. Like, no, use it as a tool to make a better agency. As far as the pushback, when like I said, I modeled it after Ohio, and the guy I talked to in Ohio said their higher ed was pushing back on this audit. Said, we don't need this audit. We don't need this audit. What are you doing? You're just oversighting us, and really threw a fit. After they did the audit, the money higher ed saw was about $98 million. Now, when they didn't take the money away from higher ed, they just found $98 million worth of savings for them. Now in Ohio, higher ed is going saying, please, can we have more audits? And it's just, and as a teacher, you probably have done this in your classroom, have your kids get up and stand on their chair and look at the classroom. I had a teacher that made us do that one time. I had a teacher made us do that.
Liability if one of them fell off.
Well, I went to school back in the 70s and 80s. We didn't care about that stuff. I was drinking water out of a hose. But the idea behind that, what that teacher was trying to show us, is taking a different look, another perspective of the same scenario you always look at, but do it from a different position. And things look a little different. And that's why these outside audits, I think, will be so good. It's going to be an agency is going to be looked at by, that was me, by a different perspective. And, I think it's going to be a good thing. And I think we're going to find a lot of savings. And it's not going to be savings that's going to be the end-all, fix-all, and we don't have to worry about it anymore. But it's going to be a piece of the puzzle to help start fixing things in this state.